Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Life podcast. On today's show, I'm talking with Spencer Miles. Yeah, I'm not going to say where from or who he is, but he's just a friend of mine, and we're going to talk about COVID-19. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
But before we get into that conversation, I want to tell you about Get a Grip Studios. That's right. This is not a place for tire kickers, but if you want to get serious about a podcast where all you have is the time to record and the time to prep, and you need someone to do everything else, getagripstudios.com. Fully virtual before virtual was a thing. What's up, Spencer?
Not much. How you doing?
You know, I'm doing really good. What's interesting is that I saw this video on Twitter and something struck me about it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Scott, go ahead and throw that Twitter video up. Let's just watch it here. It's 2 minutes long. It's very. By the way, if you're listening to this, this is very, very. I don't know what the right word is. This is rated R. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Wait, girl, who they was fighting? She want her wing. She want her wing, Oh, look. She going on it. Oh. They're jumping though. Oh, she's sticking out with the arm. She jigging out. She got the center. Oh!
Look at him. Oh, look at She's about to beat my sister up. No. Oh, look at this. I can't hear you. Oh, I ain't gonna let him know. Come on, y'all gotta get off the bus. Y'all gotta get off the bus. Let me stop. Y'all need to get off the bus. They don't want to stop for me.
Yeah, that's pretty scary, dude.
Yeah, it's a bit disturbing.
So what I want to talk about here is the idea that when I watched that video, and it was very difficult. It took me like 2 or 3 times to watch it. Okay, because I was like, oh God, I can't even watch this. Then finally I watched the whole thing, and forget about the fact that the parent filmed it and didn't break it up. Forget about the fact that the older sister didn't break it up, came in and beat the younger kid up. Okay, forget about the fact that the bus driver was standing there. He was the one with the vest on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Forget about the fact that he's just telling kids something, and it's a crazy situation for someone to deal with, okay? Like, don't get me the wrong way. But what kind of struck me as odd is that it looked to me like that the behavior was modeled, that the kids knew what to do and they felt okay to break a window of a bus and, to vandalize something. There's no reverence or respect for the asset, the vehicle. And they felt like, smashing stuff up is just normal. That's what people do when they're upset. They smash everything and beat people up that they disagree with. And what's interesting is that people would say, well, that's because of the Capitol Hill riot, or that's because the insurgents or whatever they are, or it's because of the other side would say it's the BLM Antifa folks, that this sort of stuff. All of this to me is the COVID-19 riots. All of it. Okay? So people say, oh, no, this is a racial issue. We need to solve the institutional racism or whatever. I think that's a separate issue that doesn't involve smashing everything up. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
The idea of I can smash something because I'm upset, or because someone pissed me off or whatever. Now I get to break and smash public property, private property, whatever, because I'm upset that this girl on the bus called me a name or whatever. I have never seen that before in my entire life, and I think it's probably happened in the past, but I think it's absolutely viral now. This idea that people are allowed to smash and break things, and I think it's directly because of COVID-19. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, the first thing that shocked me was the age, right?
Sure.
I put him somewhere in the 10 to 12 range.
Something like that. One of the kids was tiny with his mask on. It's just like so COVID, you know?
Might have been the only kid wearing a mask, by the way, which wouldn't happen on my kid's school bus. But it does bring into question what world were they raised in where it's okay to break a bus on a window on a bus. I don't think in our generation we ever did that, right? I guess it wasn't viral. There wasn't anywhere to post those videos back then. But I went to a pretty hardcore school, not the greatest school in the world, and never saw anything like that. No. So where is it stemming from? It's a great question.
I think this is all of a result of modeled violence because of the COVID-19 riots, and I keep calling them that. And the Capitol Hill insurrection, or whatever you want to call it, or the Black Lives Matter Antifa riots, or whatever you want to call those things. I don't think those have anything to do with the actual issues that people are purported to them to be about. So, for example, the insurrection is about Donald Trump's followers, whatever.
Yeah.
The Black Lives Matter protest is about George Floyd. And I'm sure the protests were, but the riots weren't. Okay?
No.
And my point is that people have been, everything has been taken away from them. Okay? Their jobs, their school, their activities, nothing. They're stuck on devices all day, TVs all day, and when the opportunity to express rage comes out, it leaks out, and it doesn't matter what the reason is.
It's true, because you get into that setting. You're right, and it's here we go. Let's get all of our anger out, all of our frustration, depression, all of it, right? And I believe you and I were talking early on in the COVID days, May last year. I remember saying something to the effect of, we're going to have riots pretty soon. I didn't think it would be the way they are today. That obviously took a turn. But you're right. Like, you can't lock people down, take jobs away, take money away, take just their livelihood, and then expect nothing to happen. It's just human nature. We're going to fight back.
Yeah, but people, the interesting part about it is that when I look at these things, people don't even, this is my true belief. I think in 100 years, if it's all still here, people will look back at this time and it'll be the COVID-19 riots. That's what history will call it. It's like, this happened and this incident happened, but everything was ratcheted up by 10 because everyone had been locked down for 6 weeks prior to that and hadn't left their homes and weren't able to see their family and were isolated, abused, some of them in abusive environments, and even the way the parents were filming the attack, filming that is like part of this idea that this like violence porn, or this idea that you should be, you know what I mean? It's like, this needs to be recorded because it's, filming people smashing stuff and not bystanders. My act of intervention is to film. That's
we've absolutely turned that corner, right? Because you sit in your house, and at first there wasn't a lot of people out. I remember even in our city, there wasn't a lot of people out first of June last year, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're locked in. You're looking at your device, you're seeing it, and you're like, hey, I can go and do that, and it just became bigger and bigger. You're right. Absolutely.
And I mean, just so the listeners know that Spencer Miles lives in Seattle, so he's at the apex of all this stuff. I mean, to the point where they actually took over a part of your city and created an autonomous zone.
They did, absolutely. And now they're taking over schools and things like that, and on playgrounds. It's insane to me to look around and be like, and the kind of the question I always ask in all of this is, Where's the leaders? Where's the adults?
Well, the leader
They're
is
in
the
that
one that's
video.
willing to commit the most violence in that autonomous zone.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what it is. It's the person who's the most extreme with the violence or the ability, like the it's like it's not a matter of who is expressing the most truth. It's not a matter of who represents the movement. It's sort of a who is the most violent or who can inspire the most amount of extremism becomes the leader in those places. And I find that very interesting, actually. And that video, those kids have been modeled that smashing behavior. They've seen those videos online from the either wing, the Capitol Hill smashing windows of Parliament, not Parliament, of the
Capitol,
Capitol, and they've seen all that. It's been modeled to them that when you're mad, you get to smash things. And then you get to beat people up and intimidate them. This is a new thing, Spencer. And I wanted to roll it into the next article that popped up yesterday on Bloomberg, which is, we must start planning for a permanent pandemic. And yeah, I don't even know what to say to this, Spencer.
I don't either.
Like, what do you?
I mean,
Andreas Kluth. What are you talking about, pal? Like, I mean, are you serious?
But you start to see things where they're calling, racism a public health issue, right? I think governments have figured out using public health, you want to put those quotations around it, allow them to kind of sidestep our traditional ways of government. So they can go and say, oh, racism is a public health issue. So now we can make rules, change things, lock people down, do whatever we need to do under the guise of public health. So maybe it's not COVID that's the pandemic forever. There's just a pandemic forever.
Well, listen, this is the age of demigods, okay? And what I mean by that is everybody is a demigod that can't be questioned. And they, every public health officer, every local mayor, every, premier or state governor or whatever is a demigod now. How dare you question me? Don't you know this is all for your own good? Can't you see that? What's the matter with you? You're going to kill people by buying an ice cream cone. You know what I'm saying? True. It's like they're all demigods, and they need panic. They need their emotional inflamers. They need the panic at the highest possible level they can get it to in order to maintain this. Like, they need to have panic. And even this idea of the problems with vaccines, it's interesting because they even like that. Even though vaccines were the salvation, the panic, like, okay, 6 people had blood clots out of 6 million. I mean, okay, it's like
it's that one interests me. It kind of blew me away to the point of, is 6 people really the number? Because why, if you're pushing, at least down here, we're pushing how hard it is. Everybody needs to get a vaccine, 100%, right? That's what they've been pressing. It's on our road signs. It's everywhere you look. So why, if 6 out of, I believe it was like 6 million had this, that's a very low percentage. So why create more hesitancy? Because they've been talking all about hesitancy, right? Why create more?
I would say this, because they need the panic.
Yes, they need the fear.
Yeah, because if everyone gets vaccinated, now we're done. Right? So forget about it. Let's go back a second here, because there's the argument that there's way more adverse events from vaccines than the reporting. And they know this. They know that like 1% of all vaccine adverse reactions are reported. But most of those are deaths and Bell's palsy. Almost everybody has an adverse reaction to these COVID vaccines. Yeah. I haven't heard anyone that says they haven't had an adverse reaction, meaning they didn't get sick after taking the vaccine. Yeah. I mean, everybody I know, I had a really rough weekend. I'm not looking forward to the second dose. Everybody's had an adverse event. So the adverse events is like 100%. Okay? True. Like, it's 100%. I don't know
and that's known.
That's my anecdotal experience. So
Yeah.
anybody that I know that has taken the vaccine has had a tough time with it, whether that's one night, 2 nights, 3 nights, fever,
Everybody's
chills.
a little different. Yeah, what you get. Yeah.
The adverse events rate is 100%.
I have somebody I know works in the hospital industry, and the hospital actually mandated all employees get it on their Fridays because after the first week, all the call-ins of being sick the next day.
Right.
So they mandated you must take it on your Friday. So
So
they know.
They know.
Mm.
They know.
They absolutely
So
know.
it's the adverse events rate is 100%. It's not 2% or 3%. Everybody has a bad reaction to the COVID-19 vaccine, which is not the case for other vaccines.
No.
Okay.
True. Yeah,
It's not the case for flu vaccines.
No.
Some people have an adverse event with flu vaccines, but it's not it's not anecdotally. My wife would get flu vaccines every single year. She never had one adverse event.
Maybe a sore arm, right? Yeah.
Right. So the underreporting of adverse events is obvious because everybody has an adverse event. Okay? The real problem is with the Bell's palsy, the bleeding, and the death. Okay? So are those being underreported? Well, here's what's interesting, okay, about that. Because there's one thing that the press, the media pandemic press, the people that have created this fear in everybody, the media, okay, they love the fact that there's adverse events to the vaccine.
Of course. It's a story.
It's part of
right?
their narrative. Everything's a panic. Everything's a panic. Okay? When really we know everybody's going to have an adverse reaction to the COVID-19 vaccine. And you know what? Maybe overall it's good that, you know, that we all take it anyway and go through this and then people are immune and you get your second dose. Get it over with. Right? But they can't have that narrative. They need to instill fear and panic into it, which is why they're pro-vaccine, but at the same time they're pro-panic about vaccine, which it doesn't seem to make sense to anybody.
It's a weird place to be, absolutely. Yeah,
but it's actually the truth.
Sides.
They need the panic. They need the fear to keep this stuff going. The best thing that could ever happen to the media, because got to remember, the media is in bed with the politicians only as far as they're able to create viral, constant watching news cycle, right? If their news cycle means the kicking out of those politicians for new politicians under a different crazy panic porn news cycle, the media doesn't care about that. They only care about the panic.
The panic, yeah.
Right?
Because
that's it.
Yeah.
You know, people aren't going to click, hey, the vaccine program's actually going pretty good. That's what we have to say. It's going good. You know, I mean, we're a little bit behind Israel. We're a little bit behind UK, but we're ahead of everybody else. We're good to go.
Yeah.
That can't be a narrative in the news. It has to be. The only interesting thing is that, you know, some lady's face exploded, you know, and now she has almost 2 heads.
Yeah, the videos where they're fainting afterward or things like that. Yeah, you're right.
They
everywhere.
need it.
Yeah.
They need it. But the other thing is that what's interesting about all this pandemic stuff is the caseload reporting is overestimated by 50%. And this is what you were referring to earlier, right? The caseload is overestimated in Ontario by 50%. It's in their own documents. I sent it to you the other day. Caseload and deaths overestimated by 50%. So that means every time we were shown information about COVID-19, it was 150% of what it was.
So if one person died, it's 1.5.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Like that, and the reference in the is because the New York Times did an article saying that Europe had underestimated their COVID-19 events by approximately 50%, and so the Ontario government decided that they were going to overestimate everything by 50%.
But why?
Control, panic, right?
Create the panic, right? Yeah.
That's right. And the fact that people are not leaders and that are not drawing a connection between the insanity that's happened in the United States and around the world, but primarily in the United States, from the you know, the racial Black Lives Matter movement and Antifa, and then the insurrection at the Capitol. They're not drawing a connection to the lockdowns and the basic state-induced torture of its own citizens in the name of safety. The fact that people aren't drawing a parallel to that is absolutely insane to me. I haven't even seen one thing in the news about that.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. They're absolutely parallel. It wouldn't have never, if COVID didn't happen, you wouldn't have the riots like you had. Nowhere near. I mean, because we've had, you had Ferguson, right? Back in 2016. Those were nowhere near as bad as what we've seen the last, 7 months. So, yeah, what changed? What's different? COVID. We locked everybody down. I think you're still locked down, right?
Yep. Or re-lockdown for the third.
Re-lockdown.
Yeah. I mean, we could even get into that a little bit about how ridiculous it is to only have one arrow in your quiver.
Well, I think I think I saw the Ontario one, and my immediate thought was the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So why do we continue to do the same thing? And I even look in, you look in the States, we have a certain amount of states that don't have mask mandates that are 100%, baseball games, they got 50,000 people. Up here, we only have 9,000. And you start looking at some of the data, as I like to say, look at the data. What's the difference? And to me, the only difference really is it's got to be some sort of either herd immunity or it's ran its course. The states that have locked down and continue to do it continue to have rises because people's immunity, when you go locked down into your house, you're not out in the public, your own personal immunity is not building up, just blocking the normal cold, flu, whatever you're going to get. So then we release a little bit. You can go back to a restaurant, 25%. You can do this, and immediately your immunity's down, and boom, you're going to get sick. But in the other states, they've been going around. They've built up their own immunity. It's the only thing that makes sense to me.
I got another one for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about that people just stopped caring about COVID-19 in those places?
So
for example, no, I'm not kidding you. So for example, if you have a kid that goes to school in Ontario, before they shut the schools, but if you have a kid that goes to school in Ontario and they have a stomach ache, they have to go get tested for COVID-19, and the whole family has to get tested for COVID-19. Okay, it's
crazy,
right? So what you're not seeing your herd immunity, you're not seeing reduction in anything. What you're seeing is that life goes on, that there's more to life than COVID-19. And when we go back to living our lives and we kind of do something other than be locked down and think about when the pandemic's going to end, people stop getting tested. People stop. The cause of death is not COVID-19. It's cardiac arrest. It's stroke. It's diabetes. It's when's the last time you heard someone that died of pneumonia? Pneumonia was like the fourth leading cause of death in Canada. Now nobody dies of pneumonia. Everybody dies of COVID-19.
COVID. Mm-hmm.
So what I'm telling you is that I don't think there's any difference between those states whatsoever. I just think people just stopped getting tested. People stopped worrying about COVID all the time. If they got COVID, they went home, they stayed home for a couple of days, and they went back to work. Didn't self-isolate for 14 days and whatever. And then, that I think it's that middle place where once you move on from COVID, the numbers go down. Not because less people have COVID or the flu or anything else. Let me do another one. Let me throw another one at you. Okay. So let's say instead of reporting the instances of COVID-19, they just reported the instances of genital herpes. Okay, because genital herpes is an epidemic. I think it's like 1/3 of all sexually active adults have genital herpes. And it could be even higher because a lot of people hide the fact that they have it. Okay. So, let's say you just said, today we had 750 people infected with genital herpes. Yesterday we had 450 people. People are like, holy mackerel, I'm not going to have sex with anybody. I'm never having sex again. You understand what I mean? You could create the same panic with any number of having doctors reporting something to some database.
Yeah. And then you throw it on TV, put it on all the channels, put a clicker on the
genital
side.
herpes, showing pictures of the genital herpes, what it looks like on someone's knob. His Johnson is covered in sores.
Say, do you have stock?
Get a vaccine. Get a vaccine. Get a vaccine for that thing right now. You know what I mean? You could do it with anything. You could model it with anything. Everyone's got to be locked down until this genital herpes thing goes away. Oh, too bad. It never goes away.
Never goes away.
That would be the perfect pandemic for them. That would be the perfect
that would
one.
go back to that article of when would the pandemic end? It never will. There you go.
Yeah, like you could pay. They just picked the wrong thing. Just pick genital herpes, and then everyone will go nuts. I mean, so there's like a cycle here that they need to perpetuate continuously in order to keep people fear. It's demagoguery. That's what it is. They need to get attention to themselves. They have their okay. Look, if they weren't egotistical narcissists before, now Gavin Newsom is 100% an egotistical narcissist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe a textbook picture of an egotistical narcissist. Same with Cuomo in New York.
Yeah.
Okay? They all have the same things that swirl around them. Donald Trump's an egotistical narcissist. I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
That's what it takes to deal with that crap in that job.
Get into it, yeah.
But if they weren't before, any one of these people are now for sure. They've become it. Because you can't become an egotistical narcissist. I think you can. I mean, imagine Doug Ford is about 300 pounds overweight. He's the premier of Ontario. He's telling people to stay healthy. Here's how you get healthy. Sit at home like me and eat Twinkies all day. And you'll be a lot better off. We're doing this for your own health.
That brings up a great point. My kid, he's learning about government right now in elementary school. Came home the other day and I said, "So what did the teacher teach you?" He said, and the teacher says, "The teacher told me that everybody in government is nice people." And I immediately looked at him and go, "Well, that's absolutely incorrect." I said, "They're all narcissists."
I don't know if everybody in the government is a narcissist, but yes.
Vast majority, right?
Yeah, the leaders.
And he said, "Well, what's a narcissist?" And I said, "Well, to want to go do that and to just have your life completely always, it's kind of like a celebrity almost to a point, right? But celebrities, get there doing other things. They don't always seek it out. Government, you're seeking it out. You run for an election, you put the signs out, put your names out, right? You're doing stump speeches, you're trying to do what you go." So I just told him, I go, nobody in the government is a nice person.
Yeah, probably not.
Just argue with your teacher. But
I don't even want nice people. I want effective leaders, man.
Exactly.
Effective leaders. And that, people that are, like, here's what I would say. Kristi Noem in South Dakota is an effective leader. You may disagree with what she did, which is a different situation. Yeah. Okay? That's an effective leader. Okay? Cuomo is a liar. Okay? And he lied about people. Yeah, and he hit it. Intentionally hit it. Okay? So there's I want effective leaders. So Kristi Noem is probably, I don't know if she's a nice person, don't care. Effective leader, good. Looking out for the good of the people. But, when you get into these conversations and people are wondering about how do we get into this mess? Okay? It's about biases. Okay? And I wanted to start off with the biases, but now I'm going to get into the biases. And I'm not talking about racism here, and I'm not talking about sexism or anything like that. I'm talking about the confirmation bias, the conviction bias, and the cascade effect. Okay? Our leaders, the leaders of Ontario and Canada, and the leaders in the United States and these different states that have retained lockdowns as the only arsenal, the only thing they have in their quiver, okay, are suffering from these biases. They believe what they're saying. They think what they're doing is right, but they can't get out of the confirmation bias and the conviction bias, which leads to the confirmation bias, which leads to a cascade effect, meaning that we have to keep doing this, we have to keep doing this, we have to keep doing this. So, I mean, Spencer, I don't know how we get out of this mess. You're in a bad place there in Washington, in Seattle, Washington. I'm in a crappy place in Toronto, Ontario. How do we get rid of these people that are causing these problems?
I think it goes back to just the leaders, right? They're not, and I know in our state, he had initially he had a board of different people, had business owners on there, had scientists, had a bunch of different people from different industries. Within a couple of weeks, all of a sudden the story changed, and they had thrown off all the business owners. They were thrown out. They were no longer, in his ear. So he created that board. I think it was 28 people, something of that nature, that all confirmed what he thought. And that's where we ended up, because people don't like hearing the other side. They don't like hearing somebody just test them and tell them, hey, maybe you should think about it this way. And I think that's the way our government, it's the same thing on social media, right? You create your social media to be everything you want to see. I always ask people, do you at least follow and like people of the other side, just so you see what they're saying. I do it. I think it's interesting. Sometimes I want to unfollow them really quick because I don't agree with them, but I always stop and don't, leave them there so I can see just to know what the other side's doing, right? Or was somebody who doesn't have the same belief as you. And our government's done that in all places, right? It's just they're only the people who agree with the leader are allowed to have a voice. And that's a problem. You got to have people disdain and bring the other side to it and say, hey, maybe did you think about this? Did you think about this? And the funny thing here, when you watched our lockdowns, that really got to me was you would see unions jump up all of a sudden, like the haircutting union or the grocery store workers. And then for vaccines, at first it was only hospital workers. Well, now all of a sudden restaurant workers can do it, grocery store workers. So it was always the loudest union or loudest person, maybe not a union, but the loudest industry that was screaming all of a sudden was allowed to go get their vaccines. But when you looked at our supply, I mean, we run inventory. I run inventory all day. I understand supply and demand. We had supply. We could have opened it up a month ago to everybody. We know the numbers, the amount of people that were going to go get it, but why didn't they? And so to me, it just was like whoever came and got to the table and made their argument the best got it and was on their side, because the ones that aren't on his side still haven't been allowed to get it. I think next week we do, but that's interesting, right?
This idea of punishing those who disagree with you is I think it's a uniquely COVID phenomenon. It's something that's come about. So in the age of Barack Obama, Donald Trump. So those were two very raucous, divisive presidencies. Okay, there was a lot of I happen to like. I wouldn't say I like Barack Obama. I don't think saying like Donald Trump is the right description of how I feel. I think that he was very effective in his agenda of what he wanted to do. And I think Barack was very ineffective in his agenda, if that makes sense. I think that was the difference between those two. But I happen to quite like Barack Obama. Like when I listen to him speak, he's kind of gotten a little bit funny after the Trump thing, after the election. Like some of the stuff he says, I'm like, whoa, what happened to the other guy? You know what I mean? What happened to the Hope, Audacity of Hope guy? I read his book. But what happened there was we started to see the beginnings of like the separation of the left and the right, or the Republicans and the conservatives, or like this gulf start to come between them. But you didn't see the punishment that the other side needs to be punished for their opinions.
Yeah.
And now you see that, man. Like you go on Twitter, you see people like if you're like anti-lockdown, anti-vaccine, you're calling out for crimes against humanity. From Cuomo, Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, you're like, these people need to be in jail. If you're on the other side, you're pro-lockdown, pro-vaccine, pro-mask. These people, oh my God! We need a list. Who are these people? We need to block them. Call YouTube, tell them to shut that guy down. Call Facebook, tell them to shut all these people down. This guy's This guy's an idiot. Well, he's a PhD virologist. He's an idiot. He has a PhD. No, he's an idiot.
No.
Like that kind of attitude. I never saw that before in my life until COVID. And that's what's happening in the streets, translating to the elites. You understand that violence?
Yeah.
That we started the show off with. The kicking in the window, running inside, and beating up the other person. That's exactly what's happening at all levels. It's just the game gets more complicated the higher you go up. What we need to do is, we need to, I could go on a million things, but there, you can see it, this violence that's occurred, the anger, and it's almost like a cold cultural civil war or something has broken out.
But it kind of, you bring up, it started Obama with Trump, was that 2008?
Yeah.
Kind of same timeline as social media, right?
Yeah, sure.
So we had a decade of doing that on social media to everybody. And now then we locked everybody up, made them look at that social media a little more. And now it's spilled into the real life.
Now you got the leakage.
Yeah.
Leakage.
Now we got kids breaking down buses.
Yeah, kicking bus windows in. It's so sad for
it
those
is.
children, I just I just look at those poor kids. I mean, what are they, 8, 10, 12, like you said, 13 years
Yeah.
old maybe at the most. I
Mm.
just feel so sad for them. The little kid running around, the little one at the beginning, sticking his head in the bus. I just want to take his hand and say, "Come on, let's get out of here, buddy. This is not.
Yeah.
This is.
This isn't life. Yeah.
Do you know how to ride your bike, man? You know what I mean?
Yeah. You should be on a swing. Yeah.
Yeah. You know that, and then it's just so sad to me. So I think we're gonna make this a regular, folks. I don't know, Spencer. What do you think?
Absolutely. I'm here. Well, if it's gonna, pandemic's gonna be forever, we can make it a regular.
Oh, who knows? I think it's interesting. I always enjoy speaking with you, and now we're just going to put our conversations that have been private, we just put them out there in public and see what people think. Folks, you made it to the end. I'm sure I speak for Spencer when I say we love you guys. Thanks very much for joining us today. And, social media, like us, that kind of thing. We're going to bring some guests in every now and then, and yeah. But if you want to start your own podcast, and I don't want any tire kickers. Can go on Kijiji and find someone to record a podcast for you for $50 probably, maybe 100, something like that. But if you're the type of person that needs a professional producer like Scotty in the studio in here, you go to getagripstudios.com. Virtual before virtual was a thing. That's right. Getagripstudios.com.